Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. So I recently played a game where this most extraordinary position occurred in the game. My opponent played rook e1, and then immediately their evaluation where they were winning, plus 4.5, dropped down to minus 7.5. And this amazing double pin, crisscross double pin appeared on the board. And I was able to sort of win in this position not long after. Now, what actually happened in this game? So let's have a quick look at the review. There we go. And if we look from the beginning, I played okay in this game, but you can see after the beginning, I blunder. The opponent's completely winning until they made that egregious blunder and I managed to capture the win. Let's now have a look at this game from the beginning. This was a game of the Scotch. Let's put the evaluation and feedback on. So Scotch game, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then, of course, immediately striking out in the center with d4. Now, in the Scotch, I've recently discovered the Steinitz variation, which is where I play a early queen h4. But prior to that, capture, they capture back with knight, and here comes the queen. Queen h4, and practically it's almost a forced win of the piece. Very, very aggressive game. White often doesn't expect it. And in sort of lower rated games, black here has a significant win advantage. My opponent decides to immediately capture the knight, which I thought was fine. So capture back the pawn with queen, they block with queen, and here I made a very silly blunder. So I knew that I could just straight up capture here, but then I just overthunk it, and decided to play the knight, thinking that if they capture my queen, I will capture back with the knight and be up potentially on development. But of course, they can then move their knight out of the way, which means I've just straight up lost the piece. So as soon as I made that move, I realized, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't really work, does it? And you can see, with the opponent plus 4.5. So captures, and here I was just feeling very, very silly. So what did I choose to do in this game? So here I thought, look, the one little bit of advantage I have is that I'm basically a step of tempo. So I'm just going to have to develop my pieces as quickly as possible. So bishop forward, they develop their bishop, pawn up, protecting that knight. Here I do have to move the knight, they to make another pawn move, I develop my other bishop, and here looks like I have no real choice here, so exchange, capture, so I'm pleased to see that was the best move. They capture back, and here I make a short castle, potentially sort of thinking I'll bring out my rook. Opponent now short castles. Again, you can see I am one step ahead, and here is the fateful move. Rook fe8, lining up the attack, and of course here there's already a potential, potentials of forcing sort of line, but obviously can't capture at the moment because they'll capture back. Now I thought there's something there, and my opponent now made a mistake. So they decide to play symmetrically. Looks like, it makes sense, right? Defending the bishop, but it doesn't work because once I capture the knight, that bishop is pinned to the king, so I can't sort of move a step out of the way, and potentially I can now, if they do move the bishop, I capture the rook, which is undefended. So I capture that knight, they decide to capture back, and then I can capture their rook with my rook, now basically up a rook, lost a knight, but that comes also with check. Forced move, I bring the other rook to form a battery, and even better now, that knight is basically pinned to that rook, so they can't really move that knight. And here I thought, if I bring my knight to f5, the knight then defends these two squares, and then rook here would be checkmate. So I thought had a mating chance. I think my opponents saw that, so they decided to move their king out of the way. But you know, this is the trickiness with this knight. So the knight has to prove its worth. It's captured the queen. It actually does become the MVP for the rest of the game. So here, obviously, there's a nice fork, and the bishop is lost. And more than that, potentially, that would be an attack on the rook. If the rook moves out of the way, that knight is lost as well. So looking really good here. So there we go. There's a strategy. Attack the rook. Rook forced to move out of the way, and the knight is lost. So the knight has now been seminal in capturing the queen, a bishop, and also a knight. Helped, you know, with an assist on capturing the knight. A little bit of shuffling here now, and I thought, look, this now looked really, really good for me. I thought, you know, again, an attack on the rook. Rook moves out of the way. That's fine. My rook now captures that pawn. Of course, now there's a potential discovered check with a knight move. So I thought potentially there could be another attack on that rook. The opponent moves the rook, but to the wrong place. And here we go. Discovered check. Also attack on the rook. And their last piece is lost apart from pawns, while I still have both rooks and a knight. The opponent here opted to resign. Good game, GG. There are two big takeaways from this game. 1, when defending a piece, check that you haven't just pinned yourself. And 2, knights are tricky, trappy pieces and can be deadly in infiltrating cluttered positions. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.